But let's forget the Libs for the moment. Let's talk about the government, the Labor government. We have a Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, who similarly, much like James was just showing us with Matt Kean, and certainly much like Kamala Harris, seems to say one thing before and is unburdened by what he said previously. Here's Jim Chalmers talking about how the inflation in the US is nothing to worry about. It's a silly story before the election. Now that he's the Treasurer, it's a completely different story. Have a look.
Australians couldn't give a stuff what inflation is in the United States. But the international environment is difficult too, and becoming more so. In the US, I think a lot of people are watching very closely the impact of tightening of monetary policy in the US.
Australians couldn't give us stuff. Hypocrisy, couldn't give us stuff. No, it's all his fault. I mean, these people just drive you bonkers. I mean, the hypocrisy is staggering.
Because they get away with it, because the bulk of the media will give them a pass on this. If you're not watching Sky News, you probably wouldn't know about these dramatic 180 turns within weeks.
Yeah.
And we talk about the rift within the Liberal Party, because there are rifts there, but what about the Labor government? You've got on one hand Resources Minister Madeleine King saying some sensible stuff about nothing's off the table. When you've got an energy crisis, you've got to consider all your options. And then you've got, on the other hand, this mad ideologue who's saying, no, nuclear, Chris Bowen, saying nuclear is an absolute no-no. It's not doable, it's not workable, it's too expensive. Never mind that it actually works very well in many parts of the first.
Let's have a look. You're right to point to this schism, because this is absolutely critical. Chris Bowen is a joke. He was a joke in the Rudd. He's one of these Rudd leftovers, responsible for Grocery Watch, which was a farce, Fuel Watch, that was a farce. He's the bloke who told us, if you don't want to vote for Labor, if you don't like our policies, don't vote for us. And now he's out there saying, don't do nuclear, nuclear is a joke. His own, he's the climate change and energy minister. We've got Madeleine King, who's responsible for actually getting energy working. Have a listen to her.
So in the very short term, what we really need to do is to have the coal power stations come back online, because that is the missing piece in the puzzle right now.
She wants coal. Listen to that, Labor. You've got a resources minister who wants coal. Good on her. She sounds fantastic, James.
Well, yes, and this split within the Labor Party is something that Peter Dutton and the coalition can absolutely exploit. But also, I think that, if Anthony Albanese really wants to be a 2-3-term prime minister, he could have a real Nixon to China sort of moment with this nuclear discussion. If he was to come out and say, the Labor Party is dropping its historic opposition to nuclear. We're going to repeal the parts of the EPBC Act which prevent even the debate or the discussion around this politically, and let's have a real honest discussion about that. He would be going right for those outer suburban seats, those heartland seats that Peter Dutton is trying to reorientate the Liberal Party to, but he's got elements in his own party that are not going to allow him to do that.
They'll never do it.
If we are to slash our emissions without absolutely decimating our living standards, without seeing costs skyrocket even further, then nuclear at this point is the only option. Yes, 20 years down the track, there may be a new technology we're not yet aware of that could provide that baseload power. But as it stands, if it's not coal or gas, it has to be nuclear. I mean, there's no other option. You cannot rely on renewables. You cannot rely on wind and solar for baseload power. We don't have any magical batteries, Rowan, yet that are just going to...
In fact, actually, on the subject of batteries, they did a study to back up Australian power for 1.5 days. It would cost $6.5 trillion with a T dollars to make that happen.
It is completely insane. We'll be talking about this more with Zion Lights shortly. Now, you remember Zion? She was the Extinction Rebellion, one of the co-founders of Extinction Rebellion in the UK, had a dramatic... she's still mad crazy about climate change, net zero, all that, she's still there. But she's convinced the only way to achieve it is through nuclear energy. We've spoken to Zion several times before on the show. We were the first people, of course, to bring Zion to the public attention here in Australia. Over 2 years ago, we were talking on this program about the need for the Liberal Party to adopt nuclear energy, and it would have won them the election had they done that, but they were too stupid to do it. Now, of course, they've changed their tune. We've had Angus Taylor, we've had Peter Dutton, we've had even David Little to be proud of. He's out there now, all of a sudden going, oh yeah, nuclear,
Is that his name, is it? David Little to be proud of. Interesting.
He's pumped. Now, if only they'd listened to outsiders 2 years ago, they would have known how to win the election, and they would have done it by going nuclear. But I agree with you, so long as that clown Chris Bowen is in the climate change seat, well, there's no hope of Labor going, and your dream there of Nixon moment won't happen while Chris Bowen is there. So
Not at
Chris Bowen, that's the solution there.